fields, which don't exist anymore. There was also parking that was going to be gravel, so it was not going to be as solid a surface and be able to absorb some of the water. That's all been hardscapes now. So I guess my question is, we're pushing all the water onto People Street now, whereas before we were trying to push some of it into the ground, in the gravel, and some of it into the adjacent land that isn't land anymore. So does the current project call for curbing all the way around? Or is it an open curb in the parking lot facing the existing structures now?
So you are correct, Commissioner Wisner, on it. Yeah, there was some original gravel. In talking through that, I think the new design firm that assisted the church, just from a long-term maintenance standpoint, obviously when you have the gravel parking, cars making turning movements, it's just gonna be a maintenance nightmare. And so again, that was one of those things that we talked about internally with staff is, yeah, we're trying to minimize as much drainage onto People Street, but it being a platted subdivision. If the church didn't exist today and all those lots were prime for development.
Oh, I understand the argument. One at a time means nobody has to worry about drainage for anybody else. That's the issue, right? We're looking at everybody else's drainage. I mean, and what happens at the end when it makes it to West Virginia Street and it can't make it across the street because if you're going to redo Peoples and you're going to grade it with a peaked center to push it to the gullies, when it gets to West Virginia and West Virginia hasn't been done, where's that water going now except building up on the corner and making them until it can crest West Virginia and go or Roosevelt, whatever, and go over into the ditch. So if that isn't part of the CID project, we have no idea when it's going to get done. Then we're just pushing water into that intersection the way things are done. I would wonder whether or not we could retain some of that water in some landscape spots that are small retention detentions with plants that take on a lot of water. I mean, we've seen those kind of parking spaces. Please come up and you know what I'm saying? I mean, because that's one way to mitigate some of this volume that we're going to be pushing on is, so let's put something in there that just drinks water.
Yeah, and I think the most of the curb is really just along Peoples, but around it, I don't see it delineated on here. So there may be some general sheet flow over across the remaining lawn areas too, but I'll let Sophia touch on that.
Yeah, sure. The plan is we're gonna demo the existing church, and then we're gonna use that open land as detention, and then some areas around the new church, we're gonna do landscaping. We're gonna do a 6-inch curb inside to hold the water, so it'll slow drain.
I think one of the maps that I saw was that most of the water was being pushed. I mean, you can pull them up, but it was being pushed to People Street the way it was. And on the backside, it even looked like it was getting pushed into the parking spaces and not really tracking out and around
if you look to the left.
See the grading. Let me pull a grading sheet here.
You'll get there.
Yep. I set my scroll really slow so I don't fling through 20 pages. There we go. So here's some general arrows. I think these is what you're mentioning, right, Todd?
No, that's a directional arrow for traffic, not water.
If you look at we'll start on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
For the left-hand side, the existing building, all that is torn out. All that is going to be grass.
Is this hard curb?
That's going to be
in the parking lot where you have the thing. But is this a curb or is this open so that you've got your asphalt or concrete? And then there'll just be a lip that'll go into the grass. That's a lot different than having a 4-inch or 6-inch curb there where water can't get through unless you're cutting notches in each one of those.
That's going to be where it flows down. It's going to, where the parking is, it's going to flow into that grassy area.
But see, that's not the way it's mapped right now. It's showing that the water's going this way on this, right? See that arrow, that arrow, that arrow, that arrow? All the water is coming this way so that it comes to the drive and comes out through the drive. And the water here is supposed to then come around that way. So unless this grading is changed to make it go that way, that's not going to happen.
We're going to change the grading, because when we noticed that it was like that, it was a comment that we just didn't pick up. But once we saw it, we're gonna change it to where everything grades to the open area, round the back where the parking is, and on the side on the far right-hand side, anywhere there's grassy area, that's gonna be detention for the holding water. And also, we're gonna do a curb where it's more contained on the site. So it's not gonna be, it'll be a slow, more of a slow drain. Where's the curb?
According to the plans, there's curb along Peoples here,
Yeah, Peoples.
And around
and then around the islands
and
here.
the islands,
And
and then the back of the building, this is all
All grass.
curved.
Yeah. We could definitely make that at the construction level if they're gonna at least grade a portion of the parking area to where the church is gonna be in. And that is another stipulation in that conditional use permit, is that the existing church facilities, they have to be demolished within 12 months after this is done. So that also, I know it's not a perfect plus and minus, but it helps with some runoff.
So, is what she's saying documented somewhere?
I'm doing it, yeah. We're
Okay,
putting that
okay.
in play now.
Okay,
So that can be something that can be changed
Okay.
at the construction level.
and then if there was a motion made, we would put those things in the motion?
Yeah, I would just say contingent upon those grading changes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm watching the other screen in case someone jumps in on Zoom. Okay, nothing's coming, so, yep.
And so then the building inspector would be the one to follow up to ensure that every one of those, bullet points got met, correct?
Correct. What we'll do is we'll ask for an updated grading sheet that shows that runoff being diverted to the grassy areas. And then that sheet will be added as an appendix to the current, to the building permit, which we haven't actually issued the building permit for construction yet. They're still going through the review for the actual internals of the building. So we can just add that as an addendum to the whole set.
Okay.
Any other questions or further concerns?
No, that was one of the original things that we had discussed in October of 22 or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's been a little bit.
So, I just want, just trying to make sure that we're sticking with what we were concerned about then, and still had some concerns about it. But yeah, I'm all for pushing it into the grass and not into People Street. That's all.
Yep. Okay.
It's black down there. We good?
Okay. Let me move forward on a motion then. Item number 4, consideration possible action on a final site plan. I make a motion that we approve a final site plan submitted by Mount Calvary Baptist Church for the development of a new place of worship. Property affected is located at 508 Peoples Street, Navasota, Texas, Grimes County, 77868, legally described as F.L. Woodard, Block 123, lots 7 through 12, with the contingency that we discussed this evening about the drainage.
Okay, sounds good.
Have a motion by Commissioner Diaz. We have a second.
I'll second.
Have a second by Commissioner Todd. All in favor, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, nay. None. Motion carries. Brings us to item number 5, which is consideration and possible action of the preliminary plat submitted by Cross Trails Development LLC for the purpose of developing a 146 lot single dwelling residential subdivision. The property affected is located alongside State Highway 105 West in Navasota, Grimes County, Texas, 77868. Legally described as A0055-0 D Tyler, Tract 4, acres 35.13. Loopy?
Vice Chairman, Planning and Zoning Commission, this next item is for Pecan Groves Estates PUD, 146 lot subdivision. This project also has been in review for quite some time. There's still some last minute button up items that are still outstanding. We can get into the details of those if needed, but essentially there's just some minor inlet sizing calculations that need to be buttoned up. We spoke with our review firm. They felt that even if those last minute corrections were corrected, they wouldn't significantly impact the overall design of the site. One of the big factors on this project too is that it doesn't have a retention pond or detention pond. And so that was our biggest question throughout this whole review process is, will any changes or comments result in one being needed? And thus far, both the design engineer and the third party that reviews that work, they concur that it's not necessary. The current open channel is adequately sized, as well as the detention pond at the bottom of the property or the whole regional area. A few things to note about this project: it did receive approval through the PUD process, meaning it outlined its own development standards with unique lot sizes and setbacks and so forth. Those are outlined in the attached Pecan Groves Estates PUD. Recently, City Council did approve an amendment to that PUD where green space was allowed to be accounted for as a greenway and parkland to be accounted for as parkland. There's also some home design standards that got rolled into the PUD, setting some minimum square footage standards depending on certain lots. And then lastly, the street design, ensuring that all streets in this subdivision would be concrete to match Pecan Lakes Estates next door. The last thing was a development agreement, also approved by City Council, that is really in line with what we're seeing tonight. There's some cost sharing from the city standpoint on some infrastructure. There's sidewalk fees, sidewalk extensions being paid. And then again, considering all of dedicated parkland or greenway as parkland. And so the attached preliminary plat has been reviewed in accordance with all the subdivision standards and the PUD development standards that were approved. As I mentioned, again, there's a few last minute button ups on the construction plan side of things. However, staff feels that it's not going to impact the overall design or lot count or street configuration. And so we're recommending approval contingent upon construction plans being approved by staff at a later date. And I think Brandon and Chad are here. They're the owners of this project, developers of the project. I think the project engineer was going to try to connect via Zoom. That's why I had it up. But if not, then we can try our best to answer any questions. Let me check if there's anybody in the queue.
So you said the amendment to the PUD is already approved,
Correct.
but for green space only, for that verbiage?
Yes, so,
Parkland versus green space and kind of merging the two words?
yes, so, the subdivision standards require that, a residential project will provide X amount of parkland space. And then sometimes you'll have subdivisions that also provide trails and other things. Well, those aren't really parks, they're considered greenways. Well, our ordinance counts those as half. The PUD that was approved that is in line with this, plat says that all of it can be counted as parkland. So there is no reduction. With that, actually, that's one thing I forgot is the parkland fee. So the developer is and council approved in the development agreement to approve the fee. And so that is in the motion in the packet. So if a motion is entertained, that is something that needs to be added in there as well. And I think it is in the motion language.
Part of me keeps reflecting back on a previous meeting where Todd brought up, how we'd approved a PUD, and now we were being asked to amend a PUD. And so I just keep thinking about that. Now we're sort of doing the same thing.
Well, the PUD has already been amended. It's already been approved.
Okay.
It actually came to planning and zoning, and then to city council for approval. So the PUD process has already been approved, the PUD amendment process.
I guess I'm just keep thinking about, being fair and doing the same thing for everybody,
Oh, right, yeah. So in that
So that's, I just worry about stuff like that.
yeah, in that situation, it would be as if this was approved tonight, and then later down the road, the developer came back and said, hey, instead of doing 146 lots, I want to do 200 lots now and make the lots even smaller. That would be changing the standards of the PUD. In this situation, the PUD amendment is already in place before it even starts, so.
So Lupe, the 3 or 4 pages that you sent me that were the site plan review, the questions that the engineer had.
Mm-hmm.
So these have all been looked at and redone.
So those are, I think, I want to say those are the exact ones that are still outstanding. We received additional information, which is reflected in your packet. But our engineer wanted further clarification on those comments. So
Okay.
They're the same. I want to say they're exactly the same. It's just asking for a little bit more info, just to confirm.
Because I was trying to compare the sheets from early July to mid-July.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I saw was the additional storm drains on
that
Blue Stem.
Blue Stem. Mm-hmm.
Right. But there's some, I don't know, some confusing information in some of these sheets. There's language in the drainage packet that talks about maximum drainage area of 1.4 acres for each one of those drains. But then you can see on the map where those areas are spelled out that there's areas bigger than 60,000 square feet, which is 1.4, the 1.4 acres. So where are those numbers coming from and why are they there? I mean, I understand that some of the drainage is from outside of the development space, and that might be a big number, and that certainly shows up on the flow rates on that very last page where all 42 inlets has a value.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them are crazy high, but it's because they're so far down or they're catching all this water from the undeveloped. So I was a little confused about that. And I wish somebody from NBC was around to answer that sort of stuff. There's also, in particular, I think if you go to sheet C21, where they have the grading and the contour lines. Yeah, at one time I did it by page number, but then they moved around, so I had to do it by sheets. So
yeah, that's usually the best. The best method on these since there are so many sheets. Is that for the existing conditions?
No, that has the contour. That's got the grading lines on it.
Oh, the proposed conditions.
Yeah.
So now it's C22.
It might be 21, 20. Yeah, it might be 22, yeah.
Let me, see if I can get this pulled up here.
Yeah, what you need to be able to do is split between like 21 and 25 and 27 and 32.
Yeah, and then Adobe did an update where the bookmarks aren't as clean as they used to be. Now it looks for metadata. And so now you don't have a clean bookmark anymore. So if the Adobe developers are watching this, it's not a good update.
Somebody's listening.
Yeah. Let me see. It's where all the arrows are, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it has arrows and squares and areas and shows that each drain is taking on X amount of volume and
Is it this sheet here behind you?
go down.
Maybe I'll do this.
Let's see what the numbers are.
Well, let me yeah, I knew I brought these glasses for a good reason.
It's still, I've posted.
It's still pretty blurry, right?
That one.
That
That
Okay.
one.
Gotcha.
Okay,
All
so
right.
so each one of these drainage blocks has a value.
Mm-hmm.
And in the document that is separate at the end, where it's all about
And the drainage
the
report?
drainage report,
Mm-hmm.
there's a statement in the drainage report that says, it says maximum drainage area of 1.4 acres. And it's like, well, was that only in a developed space? Because what you have here is, so this is blue stem.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have a drain at the intersection and there's new drains there. And then there's no drains down here. So one comment is there's a drain at least every 427 feet. So this must be the distance that they're talking about because this is probably the farthest that there is. And if you count lots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 10 lots at 50 feet a lot, right? That's where they are, 40 to 50.
50.
Well, they're bouncing around in this place. There's some different sizes, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing that that's that statement that there, but what you have here is there's the drains here and they're drawing, this is not part of the development space. Only these 5 lots are here, but all of this water is coming to these drains because it's coming from outside and that should be part of it. So this is a heck of a lot more than 1.4 acres. So I just don't understand why this language ought to be right if it's in these reports, correct?
Yes, yes.
So that's something that I didn't understand.
And and just flipping through the drainage report, there is some discrepancies where it talks about things that aren't really applicable, and you're going to find some of these. I know that I'm assuming that these reports are generated using software, so sometimes you're not going to have the perfect output, but.
No, I get it. But when it comes to the drawings and making comments on the drawings, one of the other things is if you look at the one of the maps that does have the lot lines and the new grading, and I'm looking over here where these drains are. The position of these 2 inlets, I think they're inlet number 30 and 31.
Mm-hmm.
They show them in front of the second lot from Birdie Court.
Intersection, right here.
But if you look at the grading, there's this sort of arrowed in the middle here where that's their low spot. And that drain is not in the low spot by eye on the map. So if you look at one page, you might see the drain mark here. And if you look at a different page, you'll see the drain in front of the third lot, which would be the flat and lowest spot versus on this one where you see it there. So there's a discrepancy in that drain. And if we've got one guy coming in to do the grading and one guy coming in to do the sewer line and one guy coming in to put the road, I don't know that that's going to be where it needs to be, especially if it's not the same on every drawing. So we need to make sure that that's right. Because otherwise, this guy right here is gonna have the giant puddle in front of his house that never goes anywhere. Because he's the low spot, because there's this big double-headed arrow of 207 feet. Then that's the lowest spot that they have on that side.
Yeah, and these lots or these streets in particular were, I mean, we ensured that they're the 0.6 grade, and that's why you have these areas where they're either V's this way or V's this way.
But,
to try to get the water flowing, but you're right.
Get it from the, you mean from
the
the
inlet?
Yeah,
the
you
inlet
mean
should
from
be at
the
the bottom of that hill.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And then, and I guess one of the other things that, the last meeting that we had, there was a lot of residents that complained about the drainage in phase 3. And what we heard was a developer saying, we grade them from back to front. And it's a builder that's causing these drainage problems. So when you have a lot like the one up in this corner that has a 3.5 foot drop from the back of the property to the front of the property, because that's the way the grading is. It's almost a 4 foot drop from the back of the property to the front of the property. There's no way they can come in there and put a house level without digging out part of it. So how does that jive with the developer saying that he's great? I mean, if he's graded it and the whole lot goes 4 foot like this, then yeah, it's graded front to back. But it sure can't be built on that way. So how do we ensure that these people are getting, the kind of property that they want? And the same thing inside in here, it grades back to front like this, so it is back to front, but it's at a 40-degree angle, so there's water from the neighbor coming into this guy's yard before it gets to the curb. And I think there's even a couple of them that might actually not be back to front the way they're drawn on the map. And if part of the ordinance is that things are graded from back to front, then there's a couple of lots in here or here that aren't meeting that according to the drawings.
Yeah, and generally, most builders do that, and I can't recall the specifics on the letter, but there's like a type A that's back to front. There's a type B that splits it at some point, and then there's a type C where it's all to the back, right? So the rule is not always back to front. It really just depends on the infrastructure available, the lay of the land, especially if you're developing on a hill. You'll never get a type C, right? You'll never get a type C to flow the other way. So it is on a case by case lot basis. These arrows just provide a general direction to that builder, because once the builders let's say this all gets approved, all the streets are in, the builders will get copies of these grading sheets, and when they're designing their lots for the home, they have to ensure that they're grading that lot to match these arrows. And like on this instance here where it's kind of at an angle, chapter 10 it explicitly prohibits a compounding effect, right, where you have multiple lots that all accumulate into someone else's lot. In this situation, it's like 1 or 2, so that shouldn't have a huge impact. Now, if it was a whole street, that'd be a problem, and we have seen that in phase 3, where everything was graded so flat that when you try to do a correction, then you end up with compounding issues, right, at the builder level. But in this situation, you're going to have some lots that are back to front, some that are split, or some that go the other direction. It just depends on the way the streets are all laid out. And then here, where you said about the drop, ideally, I haven't looked. Granted, I'm not as technical as our engineers are, but if there's a 3 foot drop, that tells me that they're going to cut in this street, and so all the water will make its way from this pasture to the street by nature of us having to, or by the builder having to cut that street deep down. So that'll just help it grade that direction.
Yeah, it's just that the lot is literally going to be.
Yeah, and
I mean, somebody's buying a sloped yard.
Oh, yes.
A seriously sloped yard.
Yes, and you'll end up with a pretty high, like, retaining wall style look on the slab foundation. And they'll grade the house and the lot to say, the roof is going to come around back, but ultimately they always drain a channel to come around back out to the front. So yeah, that I think I want to say in Stone Ridge there's a house or two that you can really tell that there's an angle, and that will be another project in the future that Stone Ridge Phase 2 is on a big hill,
Mhm.
so you're gonna have some slabs that look like we're in the mountains in Oregon, you know?
It's gonna look like they actually have basements, is that what you're
Yes,
telling
yeah,
me?
people will think they'll have basements, but no, it'll just be the retaining wall for the foundation. So, yeah, it's just on a lot basis, but it doesn't always have to go back to front.
Okay, no, that's fine, I just, that's what was said by the developer, and that the problems were builder problems and not developer problems, and.
Yep.
And how do we prevent that from occurring again?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, the builders will get these grading sheets and then,
Well, I think part of the discussion we had was who comes back and does the survey when it's done to say that it was,
That is correct.
I mean, are we getting grading inspections? Does somebody come in with the transom and
that's not
do it all over again? No.
No, and the reason being is there's so many layers that go. You have the layer of the raw land with the foundation, then they come back and do the grade with the topsoil, and then they'll come back and do the sod. But then the irrigator guy comes back and sometimes puts in the lines at, I mean, and then you have the cable companies, right? Sometimes they come in, so you're never gonna get a perfect, you wanna do a best effort grade. From speaking with our building official, that's not really a common thing for cities to have like a leveling machine to make sure that every lot is exactly, it sounds kind of crude, but it's more of an eyeball thing. Like if it's clear that this lot is really flat, you're gonna have issues, and then they raise it then. So yeah, it's an art, not a science. But generally, you want to have these plans to the builders so they can shoot for these kind of grades. And Brandon and Chad, and you guys are a builder, I know, so you have a little bit more experience on the building side, but generally that's how it goes. It's the best effort on these grades.
Hey, good evening. Yeah, I'll speak to it really quickly. I mean, what you're seeing on here is a typical 3%, a little over 3%, which is pretty standard over 120-foot deep lot. So, really to move any water, you want a minimum of 2%, otherwise you get standing water. So 3% is plenty to count for. Actually, that's a pretty flat pad. When you think about 3 foot or 3.5 foot of fall, yeah, it seems like a lot, but over 120 foot, it's not a lot. And that's a pretty flat. And so you will get, that's how you want the water to move from back to front as well. As far as getting into what the builders are, that's part of, the builders don't want, I've been a builder, they don't want that responsibility of having to come back and fix drainage. And so it's on the builder's best interest to make
Do it
sure
right
it
the first
maintains,
time.
they do
Yeah.
it right. Now, I know it's not, some cities, will look at that as part of some inspections, a lot don't. But I can tell you as a builder, you don't want to come back and have to put in more drainage in that after. So it'll be on the builder's best interest, and the guys that we have selected to come in this committee are vested in that, and they want to make sure they don't have to come back. It costs them more money to come back and fix it a second
Sure.
time. So it will be on the builder to maintain that.
Yeah, we're just, listening to people the other week that were
Yeah.
pretty,
Yeah.
why, now I gotta put French drain in around the house that's only a year old, you know what I mean? That's the kind of stuff we were.
And as buyers, I know some people as buyers, when they do get that pre-walk before they close, that's one thing I always recommend them to watch out for, is to look at drainage and bring it up and point it out. So, so obviously, I know you guys aren't responsible for that, but again, it's, the builder will be responsible ultimately. And so I know they'll want to do it right the first time. Yeah, but overall, when you're talking about 3 or 4 foot over 120 feet, that's right where you want to be at 3 and 3, a little over 3%.
Well, that's like the only one in the space. The rest of them are, not nearly that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Minimum 2% is what you're looking
Okay.
for.
Thank you. Can you pull up that that analysis packet,
Oh,
the drainage analysis that was
drainage
separate?
report?
Yeah,
Mhm.
the drainage report. Some of what's in there is what our contracted engineer is still looking at.
Yeah, those clarifications,
Yeah.
Comparing the report to the construction plan set.
At the end.
Yeah, my computer's struggling with how large this packet is.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big file.
But I might be better off just going to the source.
Oh, you got it stashed somewhere else on your drive.
Yeah, and you get to see all the file route and every projects in.
Section 4.3.
Hey, the hyperlink worked.
So, I was confused by some language here where, it's talking about, 134% greater than required. I think that's really supposed to be 34% greater than required. You've got 14 and you're going to 18.
Yeah, that's probably a typo.
So again, it's language. Somebody did the math from 0 and not from the value that they're comparing it to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably 34%. Somewhere, I guess 4.4, the next section. So, let's see. I think that's where it was talking about the 60,000. And that's the same thing, 187%. Again, it's just, so they're doing the same math everywhere. 4.4 there, I've got it marked in 4.4. That was where the 427-foot average distance between inlets with the maximum drainage area 1.4 acres.
Yeah, 1.4 acres.
Yeah, so that's confusing to me based off of the other map that we looked at when there are areas greater than 1.4 acres in there. So how are they calculating the drainage to each inlet? And I mean, is it a total average of 1.4, or I thought it said not greater or with a maximum drainage area of 1.4 acres. So that seems to me to be an incorrect statement. And I don't know if that makes calculations incorrect, because I am by no means a hydrologist. Although I try to be one.
I think we all learned enough to be dangerous over the years.
Yeah, and then farther down, there's a comment about the size of the grates and the drains. And it almost,
Did I go too far?
yeah, maybe. Somewhere, I mean, this is, notes from 3 weeks ago, so I'm already lost in them. Oh, inlet sizes and for number 20. So these are inlets. Yeah, go to number 20. Somewhere there's an inlet. Type travel seconds type improve. No, I felt like somewhere I saw that the inlet would have to be a lot bigger. So the inlets are all standard on the streets, right? They're all
Yeah, they're the
2-foot squares or something like
square
that.
recessed. Correct. And I think that is one of the comments, is just to verify that that it's the right that the plans are calling for a certain detail in our standard details. We have a few different kind of inlet types, and I think that was one of the clarifications is, hey, just make sure that your calculations are matching with the inlet detail called out.
Yeah. It seemed like somewhere I came across something that made it seem like that the inlet would have to be 6 feet long in order to do what it was being asked to do. So I guess my question was, are we gonna have inlets that are that long?
That is common in certain areas. You know, they're about 5 foot each, 4 to 5 foot each, and sometimes you'll have a double and sometimes even a triple, just depending on the area.
Are these all inlets like in my neighborhood where they're just an open hole in the curb going down, or are they grates? Because there's a big difference in an inlet where it's just part of the curb and the water has to go through it versus when it's sticking out into the street. So you've got a grate that's catching it, because when you have enough water coming down the street and it's this high, some of it goes down that hole and the rest of it blows by. That's why the end of Holland and LaSalle, where's that water coming from? Because it isn't making it to the inlet on the corners before it gets there. It's blowing by them.
Yeah,
and I guess when I see something that says we've got a 6 foot inlet, I'm thinking, like, is it coming out into the street or is it just an inlet that's this big in the curb?
Yeah, all of these are the standard recessed in the curb. So now granted that water is gonna have to be going pretty fast to go 6 feet over without, you know, making a turn, but all of these are recessed in the curb. They're not any grates.
Okay.
And for a good reason. Grates, you know, they require a lot of maintenance and you gotta.
Yeah, but at the same time, the way, I mean, this is, you know, the way the inlets are is once you get a pile of sticks there, it doesn't go to the inlet anymore, and now you are getting bypass flow. So we don't have, so I guess we don't have an ordinance about the kind of inlets that we need.
No,
It's up to the builder.
Up to the designer, and then our engineers just make sure that inlet choice is gonna work.
That it captures flow. Because part of the mapping that they show is you know, as long as you have the right slope so that your inches of volume are catching. But it's all got to go into a hole that's really only that big. Might be that long, but it's really only that wide.
Right.
I mean, and I watch it every rainstorm. So.
Yeah.
And some of these streets have some serious grade on them. They're 1.8% streets, right?
Yeah.
So there's some, and that was part of this report was about making sure that the flow on those steep streets was, and that the inlets were going to be good enough. And I'm just, I mean.
Yeah, there will be no standing water in this project.
No, the question is it going to go down the inlet or is it going to go farther down the street? And I mean, I'm hoping that, to me, the review that we got from our outside engineer was pretty spot on, because I was getting ready to ask some of the questions that he had already said, you know.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I guess I am thinking kind of right.
Yeah, no, I mean, we emphasized drainage on this project, so they've been the design engineer and our third party have been working really close to iron everything out. So, and I did write all these notes that you brought up tonight, and I'll even reference the video.
It's just about fixing things, you know.
Yeah, just the minor little tweaks, just to clarify.
The reports, yeah, especially in drawings.
And then the city adopts this area to go clean the debris out of the drain, like they do the rest of town.
Right, yeah. I mean, ideally, once it's done, it's accepted by the city as public infrastructure.
Okay. So, you know, but the trees aren't as big.
The trees?
The trees aren't as big as they are like where I am, and
you
know, the debris just fills up the drains constantly.
No, the debris there is yard debris, you know, like
smaller debris.
people.
Actually, I think I heard Brandon say he's gonna do 12-inch caliper trees on every lot, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've still got debris
Yeah.
hanging out from the hurricane.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wish they didn't have such big trees with the last storm, so.
Old neighborhoods.
Well, I love it, but yeah, it's very costly.
But yeah, as mentioned in the staff recommendation, there's a few button-up things that are still being taken care of on the construction plan side of things, but again, staff feels that none of those corrections are going to impact the overall design and layout of the site. So I've notated all the comments.
Yeah, because what we're voting on is design and layout and the parkland.
Correct. Yeah, the construction plans, they always are to be approved by staff at a later date since, and it says staff, but it's really our third-party engineer since I'm not, this is above my knowledge.
Well, I would, at some point, like to consider the kind of drains that are being put into these neighborhoods with these curb drains versus, I'd like to see some analysis on what's really works better. I know what's cost effective for a builder, but what really works better for our neighborhoods is a question,
Yeah.
You guys must have put all kinds of drain systems in, right? I mean, I know grates have their problems. You're talking maintenance because of keeping them clean and then you've got to have the right kind of gauge steel in them so that bicycle tires don't drop through them and stuff like that. But I know living on a curb drain that looks like a Stephen King horror novel.
Yeah, I got a couple of these.
And yeah, have you ever seen the raccoons that are in them that their eyes glow when you walk by and they stick their heads up out of them? I've seen it on mine. All right.
Well, we should just put drains on our list.
Yeah, just put it on the list.
Not our get to do list, not our to do list, but our
Yeah.
get. So we're positive. We get to do these.
All right.
Any other questions or concerns?
I have no.
Very rough.
Pick a page. What page does she need to be on?
Actually, let me,
Very first page.
I want to make sure that motion is up to date since we recycled paper this week.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
But I think it's approving the preliminary plat as presented, the fee in lieu of parkland, contingent upon construction plan approval by staff.
That includes that $15,000.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Because that was so.
No, that's not that one.
At city council the other night.
First page of that.
Yes, it is included and it's a development agreement signed and filed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that might be about where you're at.
I need sticky notes. Well, I'll do it if I can find out where it is.
There it is. If you can read that.
Okay, I make the motion that Planning and Zoning Commission approve the preliminary plat and the fee in lieu of the parkland dedication in the amount of $34,000.
70.
Oh,
74.
$584, contingent upon staff approval of the construction plans. And also to approve the preliminary plat and fee in lieu of the same thing I just read.
Yep, yeah, no, your first motion was perfect.
Okay, then I'm done.
We have a motion,
I'll second it.
we have a second idea. All in favor, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Motion carries. So that leads us to item number 6, which is consideration and possible action of the minutes from June 27, 2024, meeting as presented.
I read them, and I was really thinking on the ayes and the nays. That was hard to hear. So did we go back and clarify?
With the 2 to 2?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Mhm.
I did clarify and, yes.
Oh,
It is
okay,
2
I
to
just
2.
felt like we needed clarification on that.
Mhm.
Okay. I didn't see anything need to be changed. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Have a motion to approve minutes,
I'll second.
second by Todd. All in favor by respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That leads us to the last item, which is adjournment, item number 7 at 6:57. At the
So,
feeling right and it. Something weeknight or something, that's Melissa's going to do Thursday night.